This week on Vaticano, Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church leaders gather in Rome, meet the head of this Eastern Catholic Church, and discover why Pope Francis invited them for this extraordinary meeting. Michael O'Brien is one of the top Catholic writers and artists of our time. His friend and biographer Clemens Cavalin comes to our Vatican studios to tell Michael's life story. All roads lead to Rome, goes the saying. Learn how a simple pilgrimage to the Eternal City transformed the heart of a Swedish woman, paving the way for her sainthood. Discover this and more on this week's Vaticano. Ukraine has a special place in Pope Francis' heart. In early July, Pope Francis invited leaders of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church to gather with him in Rome.
Un incontro voluto esplicitamente dal Santo Padre.
A meeting explicitly desired by the Holy Father. When he revealed this intention, many people in Ukraine were wondering, but why this initiative? I want to emphasize that this initiative was to support the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, to confirm his closeness to our church. It is through this closeness, through the conversation, this meeting, that the Pope transmits compassion to all of the Ukrainian people who suffer from war.
La vicinanza del Papa a tutto il popolo ucraino che soffre di guerra.
The head of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, Major Archbishop Sviatoslav Shevchuk, said that the Pope is very attentive to the Ukrainian conflict and that the international community have almost forgotten.
We also touched on the issue of immigration, which is very much linked to this humanitarian crisis. According to official statistics from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, every year 1 million Ukrainian citizens immigrate from Ukraine. 1 million every year.
1 milione ogni anno.
The Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church also has a duty to take care of the spiritual needs of the Greek Catholic Ukrainians abroad. There are big Ukrainian communities in Canada, the United States, Latin America, Italy, and just recently there was a request for a priest even in South Africa. This is why for the first time all 8 metropolitans, 4 from Ukraine and 4 from abroad, were invited to participate in a synod.
Ovviamente il contesto di tutta questa riflessione è stata la guerra.
Obviously, the context of all this reflection has been about the war. The Pope, with a compassionate heart, wanted to understand and feel, and perhaps even to take on himself the pain of the Ukrainian people. Because you already know that for 5 years, Ukraine is the victim of a war that the Pope himself has called a hybrid war.
Il Papa ha chiamato una guerra ibrida.
The Holy Father promised that his charitable initiative, Pope for Ukraine, will continue. In 2016, the Vatican raised about $5 million aimed for reconstruction and to help the population damaged by war. His Beatitude, Major Archbishop Shevchuk, said that the help has also arrived to the war zones of Lugansk and Donbass.
Mi raccontavano questi sacerdoti quando portavano.
These priests told me that when they brought help in the name of the Pope from this humanitarian action, Pope for Ukraine, these people cried, not because they fed themselves, and with this help they could solve all their problems, but they cried with tears of joy and hope, because the Pope has not forgotten us.
Perché il Papa non si è dimenticato di noi.
In his remarks, the Holy Father invited the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church to give witness of hope to all the peoples in Ukraine, going beyond ecclesiastical, political, and nationalistic borders. And on their part, his Beatitude, in the name of all the Ukrainians, invited the Holy Father to visit Ukraine.
If the Pope touches the Ukrainian land with his foot as a messenger of peace, the war will end.
La guerra finirà.
The variety of the Vatican officials participating at the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Synod in the presence of the Pope shows a responsibility that the Greek Catholic Church carries in Ukraine to bringing about peace and reconciliation. After a short break, we'll tell you the life story of Catholic writer and Renaissance man Michael O'Brien. Man, artist, author. Michael O'Brien is all three. A focus of the Canadian Catholic's life is his continuous search for a method through which to transmit beauty and love of God. For 5 years, Clemens Kavalan, a Swede, studied his life and work. From this relationship comes the biography On the Edge of Infinity, in which Kavalan illustrates why everyone should know Michael O'Brien.
Michael O'Brien is a Canadian painter and novelist. And these novels have been translated in many different languages and traveled mainly in the Catholic world. So they become translated into Polish or Croatian and reach Catholics in those countries. The story about Michael O'Brien in Croatia is an amazing little story, actually.
What about it is amazing?
The thing is that the Croatians discovered Michael O'Brien, perhaps because in his first novel there was a Croatian character. Mm-hmm. And then they invited him to come to Croatia. And Michael was, we say, bowled over by the generosity, the living Catholic faith of the Croatian people. There's a very intimate relationship between Michael and Croatia, which is great for me because my wife's parents come from Croatia. So.
And that's just one link between the two of you. You're both painters, you're both authors, you both have large families, both have 6 kids, in fact.
3 boys, 3 girls.
The connections are uncanny, right? How did you, I know you set out to just write a story on him and it ended up being a full biography. That's a huge task. How did you decide to do that?
At some point I thought, why don't I go and meet him? Because most authors are dead, but Michael O'Brien, he was not dead. He was living. He was a living Catholic author. Why shouldn't I visit him? Mm-hmm. So I got into contact through a friend. We arranged a meeting. I came to Canada. We met at the airport of Ottawa, and it was instant recognition of spirit. It's more like it grew from a friendship, more like a natural fruit of that friendship and discussions.
After researching him, writing the biography, why do you think people should know this man? Why do you think he might be interesting to people who may already know his Catholic novels or not?
So if you read his novels, for example, this biography will put the novels into a context. The context of Michael's life and his struggles as an artist to be a Catholic or Christian artist and decide, as he did in the 1970s, to do Christian art only, is to choose a hard life. Mm-hmm. Those who have never read anything by Michael, I think will gain by the story of someone who takes his Christian faith seriously and faces many, problems and difficulties, but still continues to struggle. And that is a story, I think, which is important for all Christians, for all human beings. When you face difficulties, you just don't go home and give up.
Who would you compare him to? I mean, G.K. Chesterton comes to mind as someone who sort of took on these great themes like he has.
Michael is not... There is a humorous side to Michael, which it does not come forward in his novels all the time so very much. But he clearly has a deep sense of humor. But there is a Slavic tone to Michael. When he began to paint, he painted icons. That was the way he worked himself into Christian painting.
Eastern tradition.
Yes. And he was connected to the Madonna House community, which was founded by a Russian Catholic Orthodox woman coming to the United States and then Canada. And also in his novels, I said he had a very special connection with Croatia. For his great book about novel on fatherhood, he went twice to Russia to do, I would say, field studies. So yes, there is Eastern spirit. He bridges West and East.
And repeatedly in the book you describe these events in his life which you can see this deep spirituality that he has. And you can see this deep connection with his faith, but also a sort of mystical experiences. I mean, he feels his hair being ruffled while at the Shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico City. He has a vision. He's struggling to come up with an inspiration for a painting of St. Francis, and all of a sudden, prostrate on the ground, he has this vision of what it should be. How do you explain that?
My concept for understanding this is what I call an inspired imagination. And this comes forward very much in his diaries. He gave me unrestricted access to his diaries, which run from the beginning of the 1970s to the beginning of the 2000s. And it's not really that you can say, this is clearly supernatural, this is natural, this is just Michael, this is something, this is the Holy Spirit. It's more like imagination suffused with spirituality, in which some things will appear more mystical and some things will be more human. But I think that it's this unity which is the fruit of deep and sincere prayer over many years.
What do you think his legacy will be?
The legacy will be someone who tried and lived being a 100% Christian artist through very difficult times where increasing secularization, I would say that would be. And Michael is 70 and moving beyond. The question is how young people can gather from these experiences of trying to be faithful in very difficult situations. I'm thinking of many Christians in several parts of the world now that have to sacrifice their lives, being killed in churches and so on. It's not always easy to be a believer.
And right now you're working on a project in Sweden, EWTN Nordic, bringing EWTN to Scandinavia.
Yes.
What is the plan there? What's the strategy for bringing EWTN to the Nordic countries, and also what help do you need from the rest of the world?
We are doing two things. One thing is putting Swedish subtitles to EWTN programs, bringing them into the Scandinavian context. And the other thing, which is more difficult, is to do our own productions, and that requires resources. So we need resources to do these productions, which I think can be very important for the development of Catholic life in Sweden. There is actually not, say, Catholic television in Sweden or Norway or Denmark right now, except some Franciscan friars in Jönköping that are doing something. But there is a great need for using different media to speak about the faith.
Good luck with that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the interview.
Thank you.
After a short break, we invite you to visit the home of Swedish saints in Rome. All roads lead to Rome, they say, and for some, the road may even end in Rome. A simple pilgrimage to the Eternal City can leave an indelible mark on the heart of the visitor. That was the case for Lutheran-born Swede and Catholic convert and 20th century saint, Elisabeth Hesselblad. A modern-day Swedish Catholic convert, Charlotta Smeds, who has also made her home in Rome, spoke to us about the path of Saint Hesselblad to Rome.
Of course, for a Swedish woman convert, to search out St. Bridget is natural. But in St. Elisabeth Hesselblad's case, it was about a little bit more. It was not only a search for a Swedish Catholic model of life. St. Elizabeth from her childhood felt called. In her dreams, she saw herself inside of this house. So when she converted, she understood that she must seek out St. Bridget. It was like a vocation. And when she came to Rome, she searched for the house of St. Bridget. She didn't know what the house looked like, but when she entered the house, she realized, this is where I'm going to work. I am called to be a daughter of St. Bridget.
It was during a later visit to Rome that Elisabeth Hesselblad entered the Carmelite community that were living in the house at the time. She became a postulant and in 2 years got permission from the Vatican to wear the Brigittine habit and to live out a vocation for the re-evangelization of Sweden. A current Swedish novice, Sister Maria Diana, took us to see St. Bridget's room. The sisters still celebrate the strong bond between Elisabeth Hesselblad and St. Bridget.
Holy Mother Elizabeth had a great love of St. Bridget, and she wanted to restore her honor here in Rome with the Brigittine presence. She also wanted to re-establish the Brigittine presence and order in Sweden. With the example of her holy life and good works, she wanted to promote repentance and salvation for the whole of Scandinavia.
St. Hesselblad renewed the order, giving it new life. She dissolved the cloistered life and established vita mixta, mixed life, to open it up for the mission.
She has retained the Brigittine habit and crown, but the original, unusual Brigittine practice of double cloister housing, both nuns and monks together, hasn't been maintained, nor the practice of having a general abbess for both nuns and monks. Now we have a general abbess here in Rome, who is head of all 54 monasteries around the world.
The Vicar General of the Order, St. Maria Ilaria, showed us St. Elizabeth's quarters that the sisters neatly preserve.
Her days here were passed with prayer and work. She started the day at 5 in the morning, then prayer, Holy Mass and work, practical work. Our Mother Elizabeth was good at carpentry. She made altars and tabernacles for some of our monasteries all by herself. She was busy with that, with prayer and with work. The sisters were praying in the church all day until Compline at 9 o'clock in the evening. When she was not praying or working with carpentry or bricklaying, Mother Elizabeth spent most of her time in her room writing many letters. She had correspondence with church leaders, with Swedes, with family, friends. She had a lot of contact with people. She wrote a lot. She received the sisters for conversation during the day. She was always kind and calm. She was never anxious, and she was never sad. She never showed sadness.
Hennes dag var fullt och var mycket aktivt.
During the Second World War, Hesselblad organized humanitarian help to the Romans. One of the most remarkable and radical decisions was to hide Jews inside the convent. Sister Maria Ilaria, together with Sister Maria Lisa, walked us through the corridor that used to be their hiding place.
How Mother Hesselblad was offering to home these Jewish people and hiding them, but same time was something special. She was respecting their faith, also possible to give and to celebrate their celebration, not asking that you always become to Catholic celebrating or Christian celebration, but to continue their own Jewish tradition.
For her courage and assistance, Hesselblad received an award from the Order of Malta and the title Righteous Among Nations from the State of Israel. Those who knew her remember her as a mother. Sister Elisa lived with the saint during her novitiate. She recalls her first meeting when she brought Christmas sweets to the sisters and to an already sick in bed Elizabeth Hesselblad.
After 2 days, when she felt better, she invited me. The mother had a very strong sense of humor, and she said to me, "Behold, here comes the daughter of chocolate." And she left this privilege to me for the rest of my life, while she lived. She called me by that nickname. Mother's whole life was a continuous suffering, felt through physical suffering, and also through crossroads and problems that were not lacking because religious life carries with it joy and also suffering. I lived with Mother from 1954 until her death in 1957, and this is what she left us as her spiritual testament: her great humility, her great spirituality, prayer, sacrifice, and work.
For this legacy, John Paul II beatified Elizabeth Hesselblad in 2000, and Pope Francis canonized her in 2015. The new Brigittine branch, renewed by Elizabeth Hesselblad, continued St. Bridget's mission to pray for the conversion of Scandinavia. From Rome, the order has spread to more than 50 countries throughout Europe, Asia, and North America. And though St. Hesselblad's focus was on the world, her road ended here in Rome, where her tomb remains.